Good evening from Montreal. And this evening I wanted to talk about what we're seeing taking place, I guess, in North America, but across the world, if I understood it right. What we're seeing is a wave of protests which are rising across the world, or whatever. A wave of protests by now at the moment it's mainly university students on different campuses who are protesting the genocide or protesting the so-called war, if you want to call it war, that is taking place in Gaza. And it makes me very happy to see this. It makes me very happy to see these protests that have arisen at the moment, or whatever. They remind me, in a sense, they remind me of the having grown up in the '60s. They remind me of the Vietnam era protests, or whatever. Not as big in scope, but who knows? Who knows? They're picking up momentum at the moment. And someone has to speak out. Someone has to really speak out against the atrocities which have taken place in Gaza and which are still continuing in Gaza. Someone has to speak out against the brutality and the genocide which is occurring in Gaza. We cannot remain silent. Really, we cannot remain silent. It's not only the task of the students to speak out against Gaza, but it is the task of each one of us, to voice ourselves and to make ourselves heard in this suffering which is called Gaza. I mean, it is hard. It is hard when you look upon what has taken place in Gaza and is still taking place. It's hard to remain unmoved by the killing, by the destruction, by the suffering that we see unfolding in front of our eyes. I mean, if we talk about the word global community, well, then we better put this into practice. We better put this into. This is what it means to be a global community. It means to speak out, even though you're not living on the same continent. It means to speak out against the injustice and the brutality which occurs across the world. And, you know, I mean, we have to speak out because, listen, people, our tax dollars, it's nothing new, but our tax dollars are being used to fund wars, continuous wars. Just take a look at history. The Iraq War. I mean, the Vietnam War. Countless other conflicts that you can think about, or whatever. This is what our governments do. Our governments, what they're doing is they're taking our tax dollars, instead of taking those same tax dollars and putting them into helping the people of our own nations. They are put into war. We have countless economic and social problems in front of our eyes here in America. You can name it: homelessness, poor education, very poor medical services. And this money goes into war. This is money which is stolen. I repeat again, this is money which is stolen from our pockets, from our hard earned money, or whatever. It's stolen and put into destruction of human beings, put into the destruction of human lives. This is something very serious. Please stop and reflect on this for a moment. The U.S. announced, was it last week or whatever, that they were going to give the Ukraine $61 billion, the Ukraine so-called war effort. They were going to give that corrupted animal, Zelensky, billion dollars, excuse me. Can you imagine how much money that is? How much money? $61 billion. Just take 1 billion. Take 1 billion, okay, of that $61 billion and think what Biden could have done to improve the infrastructure of his country with that $1 billion. Just $1 billion is just so much money. Imagine $61 billion. There's never any money for the common people, but instead we choose to give $61 billion to a foreign government where that money, who's going to see that money or whatever? Are the people on the ground in the Ukraine going to see that money? We have to question if they're going to see that money in that way. You know, it's going to go in the hands of the elites. A lot of that money is going to go into the hands of the elite in the Ukraine. Governmental figures, corporate figures, financial figures, they're going to be like pigs. They're going to be feasting on those $61 billion. So, my friends, the time is now. Really, the time is now to speak out. Like I said, to let ourselves be heard. And we should join the students, not leave the students out there alone on the front lines. We should join the front lines. We should become part of the front lines or whatever. Because this is our future, which is unfolding. This is a future of continuous warfare, which continues to unfold. The people of Gaza have suffered enough. Inhuman suffering. They have suffered inhuman suffering, the people of Gaza. Let's support them. Let's be vocal. Thank you.